and welcome to the National Museum of the American Indians Professional Development Series, Native New York in Your Classroom. Thank you for joining us. I'm Amy Temerance, and I'm the lead cultural interpreter at the museum. Native New York in Your Classroom is a free 4-part webinar series designed for education professionals that teach about the Native nations of New York State. Let's go ahead and talk about our plan for today. So in today's webinar, you're going to preview a new virtual field trip for students in grades 4 and above called Living in Native New York. Now, this virtual field trip is based on a facilitated dialogue framework. And dialogue is a methodological tool that can be used to help navigate conversations around a variety of topics and issues. And in webinar 1 of the Native New York in Your Classroom series, we introduced the foundational theory and skills of dialogue. This virtual field trip is also tied to an upcoming exhibition called Native New York, which will be on view at our museum in New York City in 2021. We'll post a link in the chat to where you can learn more about this exhibition. The facilitator for today's virtual field trip demo will conduct the program as we would do it for a student audience. And so that means that audience participation is strongly encouraged. This virtual field trip demo will last about 45 minutes. After the virtual field trip demo, we'll then talk about the museum's distance learning programs for students. I'd now like to introduce the facilitator for today's session, Carrie Gonzalez. Carrie is a program coordinator at the National Museum of the American Indian.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carrie Gonzalez, and I'm an educator with the National Museum of the American Indian in New York City. And I will be leading today's program demonstration. Amy is going to continue helping me out on the sidelines during the demonstration. So thank you, Amy. During our program today, I have a lot of things that I want to share with you. And so in order for all of us to have the best experience possible, for everyone to agree to a few things. Let's remember to speak for ourselves and not as a representative of any group. Let's also try to listen and not judge each other. If you also find you typically don't share very much in these types of programs, try to step up your sharing or participation. If you find you normally like to share a lot, step up your listening. If those are things you could get on board with, go ahead and raise a virtual hand. To do that, you could click on the participant icon in your Zoom toolbar, and then you could select raise hand.
Carrie, it looks like most people are on board, and so we can continue.
Awesome, fantastic. Today's program is very interactive. It's very interactive, and there will be many chances for you to share your thoughts and observations. And here's how you could do that. The first thing you're going to do is to create what we're going to call your Pear Deck window. Pear Deck is the name of the tool we're using, and it's going to be the main place where you'll be able to add your voice to our conversation. To launch Pear Deck, click on the link posted in the chat. Once you click on this join link, you should see the how to participate slide in both your Pear Deck window and your Zoom window. How can you tell those two windows apart? In Pear Deck, you're going to see an access code in the upper right-hand corner. In the Zoom window, you will not. Next, you're going to want to arrange your Pear Deck and your Zoom windows so that you could easily get to both during today's program. You could arrange the windows side by side. You could start by minimizing your Pear Deck. Just remember it is so you could get to it where it is so you could get to it later. And once you're done that, you can return to Zoom and we'll continue. We'll give everyone a few seconds to do that. If you're having any technical issues, just let us know by posting in the meeting chat. How's it looking over there, Amy?
It looks like most of us have joined, so we can go forward.
Sounds great. Okie doke. All right. As we begin our program today, we want to take a moment to gratefully acknowledge the Native peoples on whose ancestral homelands we gather, as well as the diverse, vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. I'm in New York, so I'm in Muncie, Lenape land. As I mentioned, I work at the Animate Eye. Our museum has two buildings. The one in the photo on the left is in Washington, D.C. The other one is on the right is in New York City. I work at the museum in New York City and I get to work here every day, which is pretty special. And since we're now virtual, we're both working in, I feel like I'm working both museums. Our museum represents over 2,000 different Native American nations and communities from North, Central, and South America. So we don't just represent tribe in the US. Now that you know a little bit about me, where I'm from, I'd like to get to know you a little better. To do so, head over to your Pear Deck window. In your Pear Deck window, you should see a world map. Look for a red flag on that map. If you don't see a red flag, then that means that you are in the Zoom video conference. You only see the flag if you're in Pear Deck, and to do this activity, you need to go into that window to participate. Go ahead and drag the red flag to the part of the world that you call home. One cool thing about Pear Deck is that all your responses will be anonymous. So I won't actually know which flag belongs to you. Once you're finished, please come back to the Zoom window. You will also see a timer pop up on your Pear Deck screen. At the end of that time, your screen will lock and you will not be able to type your responses. So we got a few more seconds. Oh, and I see all these flags are moving around. Oh my God. We have people from all over the world, all over the United States. All right, I see a few more flags being moved to side. Okay, got the timer. All right, we got 3 more seconds, 2 more seconds. Perfect. Now I'm going to display everyone's responses over in Zoom. So we see a lot in New York. We have some on the West Coast. We also have one over in Hawaii. We have some down by South America and a few in Europe. All right, so we have plenty. And also some up all the way in Canada. Thank you so much for joining us. Great. Think about the place you mark on the map as your home. What makes a place home for you? Go ahead and type your response to the question in Pear Deck. Remember, your responses in Pear Deck will be anonymous. No one will know. You will also see a timer for 30 seconds on your Pear Deck screen. And at the end of that time, you will see the screen will lock your answers and you won't be able to type any more in there. Great, I'm starting to see some responses. Yeah, from Seal, it's a place where my tribal nation has always been. Hey, we also have family, friends where I'm able to rest. Great. Once you finish entering your response, head back over to the Zoom window and we'll continue. Okay, and remember that Zoom window is where you can see the 6-letter access code on the upper right-hand corner. And I'm going to post all the responses in there for everyone to see. Great. So you can see some here, like it's where I live for a long period of time. Traveling doesn't count. That's from Elvin. Where I'm from, where my ancestors are buried. Also where I'm from, where I grew up, the places where I lived and where I developed. Family and friends. Yeah, so many responses. Thanks for sharing, everyone. This is the place I call home. I was born and raised in the Upper West Side in Manhattan, New York. My family has lived in this building for over 30 years, but not in the same apartment. We have moved around to different parts of the building over the years. And I have great memories of all my neighbors and people who worked in the different stores and who have lived in my building. As a New Yorker, no matter where I travel or move, there are a few places and a few things that remind me of home, such as the smell of delicious pizza and the coffee. I'm a big coffee drinker. And the sights of the subway map, the 1 train, which is the one there on the red circle with the number 1 in white, and the taxis that remind me how I could get from one place to another in New York City really quickly. And this is home wherever I go. Through all the responses you all have shared with me in our activity a little bit earlier, you could see that home and the identities that are connected to home help shape who we are. In today's program, we're going to talk about some of those Native nations that have and still call New York State home today, even before it was called New York. We're going to explore this idea of home a little bit more and what it means, not only to Native nations in New York State, but also what it means to all of us. So one of the Native nations that calls New York home is the Shinnecock. Their home is out on Long Island, which you can see on the lower part of the map here. It is not far from Manhattan. The Shinnecock people are surrounded by water, and this water helps define what home means to them. Today, when you think of Long Island, you may think of beach houses like the one in this photograph, and many New Yorkers have summer homes out there. But this is also a place that Shinnecock call home. The Shinnecock Nation home being so close to the water meant that they had easier access to water resources, like fish and trade routes. That made their land highly desirable. Even today, that area is prime real estate, especially since it's so close to Manhattan. Once European colonists arrived, they wanted Shinnecock's land as well. The homeland that belongs to the Shinnecock today is much smaller than it was prior to European arrival. The Shinnecock and their neighbors, the Uncompahgre Nation, are the only Long Island Native nations that have managed to keep some of their original homelands. But keeping those homelands was not easy. In 1640, English colonists created the town of Southampton on Shinnecock territory. To protect their homelands from further settlement, the Shinnecock signed an agreement in 1703 that reserves land for their nation. As we take a closer look at this hand-drawn map of the Shinnecock territory in 1797, we notice how the Shinnecock's homeland is surrounded by non-native farms and towns. In spite of the pressures to give up their homeland, the Shinnecock have always found ways of making a living and remaining a nation connected to their home. In the 1800s and 1900s, men often worked as day laborers, fishing guides, and whalers. Women took jobs as domestic workers and made baskets. In this photograph from around 1890, Maria Augusta and Henry Cuffey are standing in front of their cedar-shaped house along with some of their chickens. Like other Shinnecock people, the Cuffeys work in the fields and on the water to support themselves and remain on their homeland. To learn more about one of the industries the Shinnecock people were involved in, let's take a closer look at this object. This tool is used to hunt a sea animal found off the coast of Long Island. Which animal? Select your answer in Pear Deck. Out of those 3 sea animals listed, which animal was hunted using this tool? Find the yellow star icon in the Pear Deck screen and drag it to the answer you think it is. You will also see a timer on your screen that will indicate how long you have to put in your yellow star over to the animal you think it is, and then I will share with everyone in our Zoom window. All right, we can see a couple moving. All right, we have fish. Okay, we have a few for crab. All right, we have a few for whale. We got 3 seconds, we got 2, 1. Okay, so let's see what the answers are. So these are all the responses that everyone had inserted in the Pear Deck. Okay, let's see what it is. So thank you everyone for actively participating in this exercise. The correct answer is whaling, whale. One important tradition for the Shinnecock people was whaling. Yes, you heard me correctly, whaling. It's hard to believe there are whales in the waters of Long Island, but Shinnecock men were skilled whale hunters. In this picture, we're looking at a toggle iron, which was a tool used to hunt whales. In the 1800s, global demand for whale oil nearly killed off Atlantic whale species. So commercial whaling ships headed all the way to the Pacific Ocean in search of whales. Because of that, Shinnecock whalers often spend years away from home, earning money for their families. Today, Shinnecock people work in all sorts of jobs. They continue to fish, clam, catch eel, and farm in their homelands and care for their land and water. In this photograph, we could see Shinnecock Nation Environmental Department staff member Viola Cause tending to her tribal nation's oyster beds. Today, the Shinnecock are working to restore the health of local shores and seas. We could see that the Shinnecock home and their identity as a people is very much influenced by the sea and waters around them. And that connection to the sea continues to influence who they are today. But we also clearly see how the Shinnecock's homeland have changed over the years as European colonists arrived. My home has changed over the years. So on the left side, you have a picture of my home, of my building in the 1890s. And on the right, it's how my home looks today. So much has changed. You can see how in the 1890s, there was no storefronts or cars. Instead, you see people walking. And then on the picture on the right, you see people, there's a market, you see cars as well. So many changes, and it's still the same building. Now that you heard a little bit from me, I'd like to hear from you. How has your home changed over the years? How have the people there changed? Type your response into Pear Deck. You will see a timer on your Pear Deck screen. At the end of that time, your screen will lock and you will not be able to type in your responses. Once you finish entering your response, you're going to head back over to Zoom and we will continue. Remember that Zoom is where you can see the 6-letter access code in the upper right-hand corner. All right, I see all these different responses happening. They're coming in. Great, we got 8 seconds. We have 7, 6, 4, oh my God, 2. All right, and we lock the screens. Sharing your amazing responses to the questions. Okay. Less connection to land and responsibility as Native peoples in more diverse population, less community feel. Yeah, my home has been updated too. There are more diverse groups of people in my town than before. My home has had larger buildings coming up, being built. They used to mostly farm land in my neighborhood. Now it's a commercial area. More people from larger cities have moved to my home in the countryside. There are less families with school-aged children. Many people have second homes. My home has expanded. My city has more people than when I was born. Less affordable housing, yeah. More bars and restaurants. More modern materials. Oh, and there's more answers here. Yeah, I used to live in a hogan. Now I live in a house. I lived on the reservation. Now I live in an urban area. Housing, construction, ruined our beautiful countryside. Brain freeze. Different people live in the community, and just more and more development. My neighbor has been gentrified. I can't afford it to live anymore. All right, blended cultures, great. And all of these changes. Yeah, well, thank you so much for all participating and sharing. It seems like everyone's home have gone through some changes over the years. Some of those changes were small, while others were much, much bigger. For Native New Yorkers, the place they call home went through big changes after the arrivals of European colonists. And that was the case for the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. The Haudenosaunee Confederacy is an alliance of 6 different nations, Native nations who are more commonly known as the Iroquois. The 6 nations are the Mohawk, Oneida, Tuscarora, Onondaga, Cayuga, and the Seneca. Their traditional homelands are in upstate New York near the Canadian border, as well as in Canada. Although many cultural similarities and family connections unite the 6 nations, each one is also unique and has their own distinct language. The Revolutionary War tested the bond of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. Some of the nations within the Confederacy aligned with the British, while others aligned with the Americans. On your screen, you can see a painting of General George Washington. Washington ordered his generals named Clinton and Sullivan to attack and burn Haudenosaunee towns aligned with the British, like the towns the Cayuga people were living in. The Cayuga clan mothers, who were female leaders in the community learned of the Army's approach. They asked Oneida leaders aligned with the Americans to plead with the Army to spare their towns. 4 Oneida leaders met with the General Sullivan, but he wouldn't listen. The American armies destroyed 40 Haudenosaunee towns and burned their harvests while the residents fled. At the Cayuga town of Peachtown, the Army burned 1,500 peach trees. Homes were destroyed. The Haudenosaunee still called George Washington a name in their language, which means town destroyer. With their homes destroyed, many Cayuga people traveled west to the British stronghold at Fort Niagara, which is indicated by the red marker on this map. It's near present-day Buffalo. There, the Cayuga joined other people who also had lost their homes. After the Revolutionary War, the Haudenosaunee continued to face overwhelming pressure from New York State to give up their lands for new European colonists. They also feel pressure on their natural resources that were needed to support that growing population. And so by 1807, the Cayuga had all of their territory taken. In 2005, under the leadership of Clan Mother Bernadette Hill, the Cayuga Nation bought back 70 acres near the site of Peachtown. Bernadette is the older woman who you could see in this photograph. She's so beautiful. In Peachtown, the community began to replant the peach orchards that George Washington armies had burned more than 200 years earlier. In this photograph, you can see some Cayuga community members planting a peach sapling near the original Peachtown site. The 6 nations of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy now reside within the borders of the US and Canada, which you can see on this map. With the wars going on around them and their homes burning, home wasn't as safe as it used to be for the Haudenosaunee people. Some even left New York to find safety elsewhere. Some still live on their traditional homelands today. Even though Haudenosaunee homelands have changed over time, leaders of the 6 tribes, the 6 nations, work hard to maintain their nations, the confederacy they're part of, and the principles and values that keep them strong. In fact, it was the bonds of their confederacy that helped the Haudenosaunee stay grounded and connected in spite of all the changes that were going on around them. But why are those bonds between these 6 nations so strong? To learn more, we're going to dive a little deeper into the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. You might be more familiar with a different name for the Confederacy, the name Iroquois. That name was used by the French settlers in the 1600s, and it means real snake. This was a misunderstanding of what Algonquin people called the Haudenosaunee. It is not what the Haudenosaunee call themselves. Haudenosaunee is a native word meaning people building the longhouse. The Haudenosaunee think of their confederacy as a giant longhouse that stretches across New York State. So that's one of the reasons why we don't use the term Iroquois. Originally, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy was made up of 5 different tribes, different nations, with the Onondaga in the center, the Cayuga and the Oneida to the other side, and the Mohawk and the Seneca at the eastern and western doors of this longhouse. According to the Haudenosaunee tradition, there was a time when these 5 native nations were at war with each other. There was a lot of disagreements and people were unhappy with one another. The Creator sent the peacemaker to these nations to spread the message of peace and cooperation. The peacemaker convinced the 5 nations to lay down their weapons and disagreements and join together to follow teachings now called the Great Law of Peace. This law instructs Haudenosaunee people to take care of all things, respect one another, and to value and protect their relationships with each other. These values form the bedrock of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. To seal this promise to each other, the Haudenosaunee made wampum belts like this one. And belt is called the Hiawatha belt. The Hiawatha was named of the peacemaker helper. Now, these aren't called belts because you wear them. No, they're called belts because of their shape. They're long and narrow. The Haudenosaunee recorded important agreements by making belts like this. These belts are made from a material called wampum, and it's made out of 2 different color beads. The purple beads come from the quahog shell, which is the purple and white shell in the photo on the left. Quahog shells are found in the waters from Cape Cod south to Connecticut, Rhode Island, and New York. And there's also a lot in the Long Island Sound. These beads are woven together to create designs and images that tell the story of the promise that was made. You could see the cylindrical beads in the photograph on the right. The Hiawatha belt is a symbol of unity and care among the Haudenosaunee. When the 5 original nations accepted the terms of the Great Law of Peace, each nation buried their weapons of war under the Tree of Peace, which is represented by the white pine tree in the center of the belt. Each square represents one of the 5 nations from left to right, which you can see in the next image. You will notice that the Seneca and the Mohawk are identified as the keepers of the doors of the Confederacy, which is a reference to the Longhouse. Everything on this belt is connected by a line of white wampum, which represents the path of peace. You will notice that the white lines on either ends don't connect to anything. That's because these white lines welcome other nations to travel and take shelter under the Tree of Peace and join the Confederacy, which is what the Tuscarora did in 1722. Since this belt was made before that, that's why you don't see the Tuscarora represented on here. Now, when the Tuscarora joined as the 6th nation, the Confederacy extended the rafters of the Longhouse to accommodate them. So we can see that for the Haudenosaunee, the Great Law of Peace instructs them to take care of all things and to welcome others who share their values. Let's think about what this idea of caring for one another means to you. Think about your class in your school. What are your responsibilities to your classmate? Type your answer into Pear Deck. You will see a timer on your Pear Deck window. At the end of that time, your screen will lock and you will not be able to type your response there. So I see people responding. Okay, we have some here. See a lot of little dots. Thank you all for participating and sharing here with us. We have zebras. See dots happening. They're completing your thoughts. You have 6 seconds. 4, 2, and 1. Great. Once you finish entering the response, you're going to come on over to Zoom where you will be able to see what the responses were from everyone. Okay, great. I see some responded with to be kind, to listen, to share, to respect. Make sure everyone feels value. Okay, to share and strive for equity in decisions and resources, to make sure that everyone's story is heard and validated. Yeah, be kind to each other, to be truthful, caring, kindness, providing support, treat others as you would have them treat you. Knowledge, to share the knowledge, sense of belonging, attention, courtesy, be kind, keep them physically safe, be respectful. Yeah, a lot of kindness and thoughtfulness. We help grow each other, not judge one another. Empathy, support their growth, to educate them about our cultures. Yeah, protect others, welcome others. Okay. Great. Thank you for all your very thoughtful responses and for sharing with us today. Now, I have another question for you all. What about new students that join our class? What are our obligations or responsibilities in welcoming new students? Go ahead and also type your answer into the Pear Deck. You will see the timer once again for 30 seconds. And once the timer ends, it will lock your screen and you won't be able to answer or share your responses with us. All right, we see some more dots. We see people sharing, writing. Yeah, we got a few more seconds left. And remember, no one gets to see your responses. So these are completely just phenomenal. We get to see your little icon, your animal icon happening here. Wonderful. And once you're finished entering your response, come on back to the Zoom window and we'll continue from there. And I'll get to share all the responses for everyone. Wonderful. All right. Let's see. We have some listening thoughtfully, be inclusive to all. Take the time to learn about them, make them feel welcome. Treat them as we would like to be treated. Build relationships and understand who they are and where they come from. Provide support, listen, not judge. Offer a safe space. Learning their backgrounds, pronouns. Welcoming into the new community, respectfulness. Be kind and help them in understanding. Let them know that they're not by themselves, they're not alone. Yeah, a few more, scrolling down. Same as with our classmate, but be age appropriate, welcoming them, listen, and trying to understand their stories, their cultures, see them, be helpful, welcome, gracious. Yeah, bridging the cultural gap. Yeah, show them around, pay attention, create a welcoming environment. Wonderful, a few more, scrolling down. Actively including them in group projects. Yeah, and to learn from them too. Yeah, it's like both ways. Wonderful. Thank you all for sharing and for participating here. We could see from our share responsibilities, from our responses, is that we all share this responsibility to take care for the place and for each other. And as we finish our program today, let's think about what we learned. I hope today you were able to think about how home and the identities connected to home help shape who we are. We talked about what home means to the Shinnecock people on Long Island and what home means to each of you. We also recognize that our homes could change over time. Whatever that's the physical space, other people in it. For New York, Native nations, war, increasing population, pressures on resources brought all these rapid changes. We saw how the Haudenosaunee responded to those changes. We also saw how the bonds between the people and the promises they made to take care of one another kept the community strong in light of everything that was changing around them. A really big thing we've seen is that Native nations in New York are still here. They are here. They've always been here. These nations existed before there was a New York State, and their histories, cultures, and experiences actively make what New York is today. And I'd like to ask you one more question, the final one. How will you look for the Native roots of your home? Who will explore with you? Head on over to Pear Deck to answer this question. And then we're going to come on back to the Zoom window. Once again, you will see that timer, 30 seconds on your screen. And once that timer ends, your screen will lock and you won't be able to share any of your responses. But then we'll head on over to Zoom where I'll share everyone's responses in here. All right, I see dots. I see some responding, a lot of thinking happening. I see some about asking elders, tribal events, taking your son, your family to these events with you. Wonderful. Here I'm sharing. We can head on over to the Zoom window to see everyone's responses. We have some native land app. My family and friends. I like to learn before I visit where the traditional lands are, if there are cultural centers or museums to visit. Maps, the Museum of the American Indian. Native peoples are also a great resource. Search engines. My students, other teachers. I will look up the Native communities in my home, plan to meet new people, see a new festival, tribal leaders and elders. I can also research through our local museums. I live on my homelands. I teach my children, grandchildren, and my community. Beautiful. Not sure because most local histories emphasize the colonial past. Yeah, it happens. I will also ask my students and explore with them, family and students, asking questions during research online, websites, explore with co-teachers and teachers, NMAI resources. Wonderful. The internet with other educators. Look up Oklahoma historical markers, public records. Wonderful. So many options here. Thank you guys for all sharing with us all your responses. Okay. One sort of great resource we have here to learn more is one place you could start. On this website, you can find the rich and diverse indigenous nations that come from the land where you live. So you can see a little bit more here what's happening on your screen. Okay. We're going to this website called nativeland.ca. Okay. We have all the different maps and we have a zip code and put it in here. Fantastic. I think we're putting 1004. You get to see the different nations we have. It's a great tool. And then you can also zoom out and you get to see with all the different nations that are in the surrounding areas. Yeah, like right here in New York, we have the Munsee Lenape. We're zooming out, okay. Wonderful, you can see the different layers, all the different colors, and the different areas and regions. Awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining me today on this virtual field trip and for adding your voices to the conversation. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amy so she could share more about our virtual field trips. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thanks, Carrie, for demonstrating this virtual field trip for us. Now, the Living in Native New York program that you just all participated in is part of a suite of virtual field trips that the National Museum of the American Indian is offering this school year. Now, these are live and interactive programs, and they focus on American Indian history, culture, and contemporary lives. Now, the majority of our virtual field trips use facilitated dialogue methodology as a way to really help make the content personally relevant to students. And the museum worked with the International Coalition of Sites of Conscience, which is an organization really at the forefront of dialogue, to create the framework for the Living in Native New York virtual field trip. This framework is available in an online toolkit for educators, and we're going to post a link to it in the chat for you to check out. Now, the goal of using dialogue in our virtual field trips is to really build personal and collective learning. One of the great things about dialogic questions is that they don't require prior knowledge of the subject matter to answer. And that's because these questions are based in a participant's own lived experience. The framework for the Living in Native New York virtual program is based on what's called an arc of dialogue, which is essentially a series of dialogic questions that's designed to build trust and communication. Phase 1 questions in this arc really allow participants to share information about themselves, while also encouraging connectedness and relationship building within the group. An example of a Phase 1 question that you were asked in this program is, what makes a place home for you? Phase 2 questions then invite participants to think about their own experiences related to the topic and to share those experiences with the group. The facilitator helps participants to really recognize how and why their experiences are alike and different. A question that would fall into Phase 2 is, how has your home changed over the years? How have the people there changed? Phase 3 questions then ask participants to really dive deeper into their assumptions, and they probe those underlying social conditions that inform the group's diverse perspectives. A question like, what are our obligations in welcoming strangers? What are our obligations to our neighbors? We modified our question just a little bit for this program since it is for students to talk about how they would welcome their classmates that are new. Questions in Phase 4 really help the group to reflect on the dialogue and what they learned. An example of a Phase 4 question is, how will you look for the native roots of your home? Who will you explore with? Now, this sequence of questioning really helps to make the content we're sharing personally relevant to students. And that helps build empathy with and understanding of Native peoples. To engage with students in our virtual field trip, our educators use a tool called Pear Deck. Pear Deck really makes it easy for you to incorporate active learning exercises into remote learning. And you can insert a variety of interactive questions into your lessons, from open text answers to draggable slides to multiple choice. And Pear Deck really gives students time to retrieve and process information for themselves. Carrie set a 30-second timer here, but you can set up to 1 minute and even 3 minutes. Now, Pear Deck also works for students connecting from the classroom on individual devices, or with students connecting from home, or like many people in a hybrid environment, it works great there too. All students need is an internet-ready device and a browser window to open the session. Students also join their Pear Deck anonymously, and so no personally identifiable information is collected if you don't want it to be. And students tend to participate more freely knowing that their names aren't attached to their comments. Participants in today's webinar are eligible to receive 3 months of Pear Deck Premium for free, so you can experience the features for yourself. And we'll pop a link to that free trial in the chat. Now, in our webinar next week, in 1 week, on Thursday, October 8th at 4 p.m. Eastern, we'll talk all about the history of problematic narratives about Native Americans, the impact of those narratives on our society, and why it matters today. We'll post the registration link for this webinar in the chat. We'll also post a link in the chat to where you can learn more about the National Museum of the American Indians Native Knowledge 360 initiative. This is an initiative that provides educators and students with new perspectives on Native American history and culture. On this website, you can find online classroom lessons, other virtual field trips for students like the one you saw today, and other teacher training opportunities like this webinar. Thank you all for joining us.